SUPRA in the red, Kaspa in the red, XRP in the red, and Internet Computer in the red. What the SpaceX IPO has to do with it, all that now in this video. Hi, I'm Marius from 10x Analytics, and my channel is all about data and not about hype. And why the data from the SpaceX IPO is actually extremely exciting right now, and why it's highly relevant for crypto. We're going to go through all of that now. But as always, first the macro data, going through everything once. And as always, this is not financial advice. But first, let's understand the background. What's the current situation this week? Bitcoin dominance has actually dropped a bit, simply because some have now rotated into altcoins. In my view, however, this will rise again. For now, this is just a small temporary effect. The entire crypto market is still significantly smaller than the entire stock market, so the potential for the future is still massive. Then, we're still in Bitcoin season, and the crypto fear and greed index is now at 13, so extremely low. That means people in the crypto space, the investors, are extremely afraid. In the stock sector, meaning the equity market, things are actually going down now too. It's no longer greed there, but now actually even fear that the big crash could be coming. Then, as always, let's take another look at the last 7 days. Oil slightly in the positive, gold too, silver too, and uranium as well. Gas slightly in the red. Generally speaking, when oil rises, it's rather negative because oil, of course, the oil price rises due to news, for example, regarding Iran again. Then the macro data, the Nasdaq is up, S&P 500 was up for the week, DAX too, Dow Jones slightly up, the euro is a bit stronger than the US dollar. Then the top 5 stocks are slightly up across the board, not massively, but slightly. And in the crypto space, actually a slight recovery as well from the major sell-off. ETF inflows for Bitcoin are actually slightly positive again, 48.3 million. Nothing has changed with the Central Bank of America. As mentioned, the meeting is on the 17th, so that's next week. And then we'll see more whether interest rates will actually be raised. The ECB, that is the Central Bank of Europe, has already actually raised interest rates again. Let's see if the Central Bank of America does it too. Then we have some strong winners again in the small caps and also progress among the altcoins. For example, Monero is ultimately a privacy chain and it's up 33%. If you'd like me to do an analysis on Monero, then feel free to write 10x as a hashtag down in the comments. So much for that for now regarding all the important data from this past week. As always, we're heading into the chart analysis now, and I'll break it all down for you, including of course Kaspa, Internet Computer, XRP as well, and the SUPRA chart. And of course, we'll take a look at the SpaceX IPO and how it's actually impacting the market. And before we move on, let's take another look at my 10x dashboard. By the way, this is also available to you for free. You'll get an insight into the market, where we currently stand based on data, crypto and stocks, for example with cryptos, fear and greed index, where do we stand? There's extreme fear right now. Then altcoin season index, we're currently seeing Bitcoin performing stronger. And of course the halving, we're at 53%, so about 684 days until the next Bitcoin halving, and then an overall data-based assessment of the entire market. Currently it's bearish. Then for stocks, let's take a look here. There's currently slight fear in stocks, volatility is normal, and overall the S&P 500 is up almost 8, it's 8% in the green, so above the 200-day line. Overall assessment right now, the stock market is rather neutral. As I said, if you want to use the dashboard yourself, links in the pinned comment. It's completely free, even without registration. Let's jump back into the chart now. As always, we'll start with Bitcoin. An exciting situation has actually developed there. We already had a big green dot here, which actually suggests an oversold zone, but then the negative news came that Iran in the end no longer wants to, let's say, cooperate with the US regarding peace negotiations. After that, the price went down massively. Again, chart analyses are only so good when unforeseen events occur. Then of course, it can't be mapped or predicted with the chart. And after that, as I said, it went down massively again. And now another big green dot has formed. First of all, it means that we're still heavily oversold. That's also evident we're here in the lower range. That's always an exciting DCA zone for me. And now, however, we've bounced slightly. That was, if you look at it, we bounced about 8%. That's a positive sign for now. But why I believe we'll go down further is simply related to the stock market. Again, there. We're at the stock market. Let's take a look at that, for example. There, US 100. We've been at an all-time high. And ultimately in a massively overbought zone. That means we've just seen another sell-off. But I actually think there's still room to fall. There could be an even bigger crash. In previous cycles, it was always the case that crashes were 27% or 15%, for example. In other words, we've just had a crash of about 7%. That means it could go down further, maybe even into this range down here. So if that happens and we have a major stock market crash, that will naturally affect Bitcoin as well. So right now we're seeing a bottom forming purely technically, but if the stock market goes down, Bitcoin will be pulled down with it. And as I've shown before in previous cycles, we always ended up at around, well, at least in the last one, around 76%. Of course, the more market capitalization Bitcoin has, the more stable it is, and the less quote-unquote volatile Bitcoin is. But we're currently only at about 50% in this cycle, a bit more than 50%. So even if we go to 65, 60 or 70%, we're still in this range. And for me, this range is where it gets exciting, where I start to see a bottom in the bear market. Now let's look at the situation for altcoins again. As always, altcoins here too. We actually went lower here again, lower again there, also a big green dot. As I said, same system as with Bitcoin. I'd still be cautious there for now, but for DCA, it's definitely an extremely good point right now. Definitely not all in. Let's move on. Ethereum. How does Ethereum look? Also a similar picture, right? We've seen a sell-off here and have now formed a big green dot. This means it could actually go up a bit again for now, but you can already tell here the momentum is already weakening again. Solana also formed a new low here in this cycle at around 60, maybe an interesting DCA entry point here too, but there's definitely a chance it could go even lower. Then we come to Kaspa. How's Kaspa looking? It was very interesting there. We were rejected several times here. Big red dot, then it went down. And now we had a big green dot here. After that, it actually went up 18-19%. But then we had a small red dot here, a bearish trend reversal. Now another small green dot. We're in the middle range here. So in my view, it's a dangerous zone. I would wait and see with Kaspa for now. By the way, I made another video about Kaspa recently. I'll link it for you right up here. With Kaspa, as I said, I'm personally waiting until we get back into an oversold zone. And then slowly it'll start getting, let's say, exciting for me with Kaspa. Technically, I still think very highly of Kaspa. Then Internet Computer, how's it looking there? We ultimately had a small red dot here, bearish trend reversal, then went down as well, about 28%. Now another bearish, a bullish trend reversal, so a small green dot. A positive sign for now, which is good, but again, if the whole stock market crashes, if Bitcoin crashes, then Internet Computer will crash too. Therefore, my target zone is as always down here when a large green dot forms. And how's it looking with SUPRA? SUPRA is actually very volatile here, similar story here too. We first had a small red dot, bearish trend reversal, which is still intact. There's still room to go down here too, and down here, an exciting zone would slowly emerge from my side. Then XRP, how's it looking there? We had a massive sell-off here, you really have to say, 28%. But a large green dot formed here as well. It was an extremely exciting DCA zone, definitely, from my point of view. We went up as well, but now the momentum is slowly fading away again. Here too, I'd wait here until we get into the oversold zone. But let's come to SpaceX now. There was a huge hype there. All retail investors were invited to invest. Why? Well, the big players naturally invested much earlier again, and naturally need exit liquidity, meaning the money is there so they can, let's say, sell their shares to others. Why I have really stayed out of it completely so far, I don't necessarily need to go along with the hype here, because ultimately, if you're interested in the company, which is extremely strong, the vision is extremely strong, I can gladly make another video about that. But it's like that again. Let's say here it's being hyped like crazy, it'll go up a bit too, but ultimately it'll level out. On average, the last major new IPOs were always down 50% in the first year. Meaning you can also get in much cheaper. You shouldn't get into FOMO there, because that's always the biggest problem. As you let yourself be guided by emotions, it's everywhere. A lot is posted on X, on YouTube, everyone's saying everyone wants to get in. Don't let that blind you. Proceed calmly and consider an entry once the price has stabilized. There will still be a good entry point for the future there. How does this affect crypto now? Quite simply, the media focus is currently on SpaceX. Liquidity is flowing into SpaceX and there's simply very little left for crypto. The crypto narrative is currently just at an all-time low. And ultimately, you can see that too. First, it was the AI stocks that were really hyped. Now, of course, SpaceX, maybe then, if more, any new stock market listings come out this year, for example, from cloud, but also from OpenAI and so on. All of that will naturally attract much more attention. The crypto market will have its attention again in the next cycle, in my view. Let's take another quick look at the stock sector in general, as mentioned before. We had a correction here. This is now the S&P 500. If you think about it, we had here, by the way, the indicator, 10x indicator also signaled it, a possible bearish trend reversal, then fell by 5%. Now a slight bounce again. Let's see. From my perspective, I think it's going to go quite a bit deeper. Then I had just shown that, the US 100. But first, let's look at the most important stocks again. How does it look for Apple? Sell off here too, a similar picture for Nvidia. By the way, we already had warning signs here. I've been posting them on X regularly, by the way, about stocks and of course cryptos, where the chart analyses actually stand. And Tesla, for example, a similar picture, danger reported here too. And we plummeted downwards. Palantir, similar picture. Here we were rejected several times, by the way, by the resistance line. So all in all, you can already see that the crypto and stock sectors are currently in a slight correction. In my view, however, there will be an even larger correction. For next weekend, I have some exciting altcoins on my radar, but also stocks, of course. And if you don't want to miss news like this, truly data-based, then please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. I'm linking another video for you here now, which is also extremely exciting. Thanks for watching. And then I'll see you in a bit.